Hello, booktube. I'm Sean Breeze Books. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm here with Lindy of Lindy's Magpie Reads, and we're here to have a little book club discussion. Hello, Lindy.
Hello, Sean.
So lovely to be chatting with you. So, the book under discussion is a debut published earlier this year, called This My Second Life, with a gorgeous cover, and of course, I've got my settings so that you can't. I'm going to put the cover GIF up, but by Patrick Charnley. And I won't go into the whole story of how I came upon two copies. That story is only for premium members. But I sent one of them to Lindy, and we have now read it, haven't exchanged any of our opinions about it, and here we are to do so. Maybe before we give our opinions, would you like to introduce like kind of the opening premise? What this book is about? I'm putting you on the
So,
spot. I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm sure you can do it.
Jago, the character who's narrating this in first person, has had a brain injury. Right from the beginning, we know that he had cardiac arrest, and as a result of that, and having his heart stopped for something like 40 minutes, he's now recovering from a brain injury. So he's alive and has some limitations because of this brain injury disability. And I have recently recovered from a brain injury myself, my fourth concussion. And you were right, Sean. You were right. It was a perfect book for me to read because I could identify so much with this character and what life is like for him.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're going to get into all the weeds of that. Absolutely. I will just add to your opening premise that he is living with an uncle, a bachelor uncle. Maybe bachelor. I don't think he's ever been married. He's a bachelor uncle in Cornwall, which is in the little town St. Ives, I believe it's called, on the coast, and that is the town where Jago grew up. And then he'd moved to Bristol recently, couple of years ago, and that's where he had his injury. And now he's back, and he's in the. How long has he been out of the hospital? Not very long, like a few months maybe, and he's staying with his uncle on his uncle's farm.
Yeah.
And so that's the setting. And I was drawn to it because of the cover, and also because it's set in Cornwall, which is a place that I have interest in. I've never been there, but it's just whenever it's the setting for anything I read, I just take an increasing interest to learning as much as I can about Cornwall. So you've already started to give your opinion, but I'll give you a chance to say more if you'd like. Did you like this book? Why or why not, Lindy?
I enjoy this book very much. It's a quiet story that's very much in the head of the person who's telling it, but head and heart. And I really like the setting, as you said, Cornwall. I have been to Cornwall and I love it there.
I'm so jealous.
And I grew up on a farm like you did, so I could also relate to the
Yes.
farm aspect of it
Yes.
and how that environment is really conducive to healing.
Yeah.
As it happens, his uncle Jacob doesn't like electricity. So they do have electricity. They have a freezer where they keep their side of beef or whatever. But in the house itself, they just use lamps and candles. It's like
But
stepping back into an earlier era.
it absolutely is. Yes. Which was fascinating. I would say that I loved this novel. There's part of it that didn't work as well for me as the others. There's a kind of a mystery or an action movie type part of the story, which I didn't really care about. But yet it didn't detract because we were still so focused on Jago's inner life and his recovery and it was what the part of the action story. What would you say? It's not action. It's not quite a mystery, but there is a villain in the piece, and a neighboring guy who is a drug dealer and a dangerous fellow, and he wants to buy part of Uncle Jacob's land, and Uncle Jacob refuses to sell it to him, and that part of the story becomes more ominous as time goes on, and there's a very dramatic conclusion to that part. This will be a spoiler-free chat. If we decide to talk about spoilers, I don't think we will talk about them. You will be amply warned. But that wasn't the interesting part for me. But I appreciated that it was a way to show both Jago's limitations, but also his second life, and what, not just his limitations, but the kind of the newfound competencies, the newfound parts of his character, and his sense of power. And I appreciated that very much. That part kind of reminded me of, I meant to look this up. I'm sure you've read it, Lindy. There was a novel that came out from Charcoal Press recently about a somewhat elderly woman who had some kind of a disability, and she thinks that her daughter or her niece had been murdered.
Elena Knows.
Elena Knows. That part kind of reminded me. I thought of that book as I was
Mm.
reading. Yeah. And that kind of worked, but I could have just had all of that stripped out of it, and I would have enjoyed it just as much, if not a bit more.
That's an interesting comparison because I do see how in both novels, the character with a disability is uh, moving forward and solving something that's quite complicated.
Yes.
So it's depicting the agency of
Yeah. That's
people
the
with
perfect word.
that have disabilities.
That's the perfect
Yeah.
word. Boy, we just got a lovely view of your cat just staring directly into the camera. That was fantastic. Oh, yeah. And so I just thought it was beautiful. It's not the best book I've ever read. It's a very impressive debut. And we should also say that Patrick Charnley himself, um, the health related aspects of this are true to his life. He, as a young man, in 2021, he had cardiac arrest and a resultant brain injury, and it was as part of his recovery or after his recovery that he began writing it. So those details are autobiographical, but the rest of it is fictional. Yeah.
Yes. And so I wondered about the writing style
Yes.
because the sentences are in a way simply stated, and yet there's description in there which gives us this vivid setting, atmosphere sort of feeling. So I think it's extremely well executed. Uh,
I think so too. So the really gorgeous writing in places, the description of nature and of farm animals and the horses and everything just was really well written. And what I'm curious about is, so his short-term memory is poor, Jago's, and so it there is repetition in the novel, which I experienced as pitch perfect, not as something that was a flaw in the narrative. And in fact, with me, I'm always forgetting stuff that I read, so I was constantly being reminded because Jago was needing to remind himself of what was going on, and I appreciated that, and I wondered how much of that was just intentional? Was Patrick Charnley writing that because we're inside Jago's consciousness, or would that be the way he would write any story now?
oh,
And I don't need to know the answer, but I did catch myself wondering. I'm really curious about that.
yeah, I found myself wondering if this particular writing style has to do with that type of brain injury. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
interesting.
it is really interesting. I hope he writes more because I really did enjoy this. Like I say, the other mild criticism, which I don't think I'm going to budge off 5 stars for this book, is that it really resolved in a very tying up all the loose ends, like a TV murder mystery or something. It was really a little bit overdone. I'd like endings to be a little more loosey-goosey and not like that, but it was just a beautiful book. So
Yeah, well, the villain aspect of it did get tied up. But for me, the important part is what's going to happen to Jago in his life
yeah,
as
no, you're
time
right.
goes on. That I like the way that that is ended with the
Yes,
book because it's open.
which makes me think I hope he writes a sequel.
Hmm.
He might
Hmm.
be interesting. So you said that you related to a lot of things. Do you want to tell us a bit more
Oh,
about that?
okay. Well, there were times when I cried when I was reading this, and the reason for the tears was because I remembered what it was like to feel those. Like for example, there's a scene where Jago is on horseback and he's going down a really narrow road,
Yeah.
and there's no passing place. So if you encounter a car coming in the other direction, one vehicle has to back up to where there's a passing point. But he's on his horse and there's somebody behind him who's really impatient. And his mind goes blank and he doesn't know how to get out of this problem. And that is something that happened to me where it was like I didn't know how to solve something. It was a cognitive disability as a result of brain injury.
Yeah.
And it's really stressful when that happens. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, I know. I could really feel for him at that point there.
Oh, yeah, I felt for him throughout the story. It was really that part was just so well done. You were just so you just the reader, I as the reader, I just experienced everything he was experiencing, and it wasn't anything that I could relate to, but he just took me to the heart of that. And his low energy and then needing to sleep for 12 hours and then get up and he was fresh and he could do things, but maybe he for the other thing, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but another thing that I loved that was so I thought authentic or it just worked beautifully was that on page 6 he would say, I have to remember to tell my uncle something, but then he forgets and he doesn't tell him. And I just thought that was perfect. And it's part
Mhm.
some of those they're never brought up again. It's just that on page 11 he's with his uncle. He doesn't bring it up because he just forgets. And is the
Yeah,
reason that was just shown without a comment or making a big fuss over it, but he was
yeah,
getting
yeah. So brain injuries can have so many different manifestations. And I shared another thing that this character has, and that is aphantasia, the inability to visualize.
yes.
And so that too is something that, it's quite specific of
Right. Now
that.
maybe I don't remember that. What how did that come up in the story?
I lie thinking about Sophie. I try to picture her, and her face flashes in my mind's eye, and then it's gone just as quickly. But I can sort of feel what it was to be close to her, and the feeling is stronger than any visual memory ever could be. And so that's what I've got. That sometimes I can get just a really brief flash of a picture in my mind,
Right.
but it's more that I can feel the sensation. Like, for example, picture a stop sign, and I can sort of briefly see something red, but it's gone. But there's another sort of way of sensing that I know it's got 8 sides and it's red, it's got white lettering. I can't picture the word stop, but I know that that word is there. So it's just like sort of feeling in a different way without actually being able to make a picture in your mind.
Sophie is Jago's ex-girlfriend. They broke up. So the that part of the story, this is not a spoiler. Maybe about a year and a half before Jago left St. Ives in Cornwall and moved to Bristol, and I looked it up on the map. It's about a 3-hour drive away. His mother died, and he was very, very close to his mother. And he was in his grief, he was not able to be the loving boyfriend that he had been to Sophie. And they break up, and he moves to Bristol because he thinks he needs a complete change of life in order to get over his grief for his mom. Sophie re-enters the story, and maybe we won't say any more about that, but yeah, so that's the context for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I would say that of all the characters, I thought Sophie was the least well drawn. I didn't feel that she kind of came alive on the page, other than how she felt about, her brokenheartedness and lovingness, but the emotional bruises she had from the breakup was well expressed. But I just didn't. Maybe she wasn't in the story enough to really. Whereas all the others, even though Granny, what was the granny's name? Granny
Granny
Carn
Carn?
wasn't in the story very much, but she just leapt off the page. And all the
Yeah.
other characters did. The uncle was incredible. What an incredible character, and so on and so on. Maybe now's a good time to introduce what you and I both learned when we got to the very last page of the book, the very last paragraph, I think, of the acknowledgments, maybe the third last paragraph. I'll just read the sentence. The character of Granny Carn in this novel first appeared in a 2005 young adult novel, Ingo, written by my late mother, Helen Dunmore. I'll stop there. It goes on. So this is Patrick Charnley is Helen Dunmore's son. And you have read some Helen Dunmore. She was a
Yes, it's been more than 20 years since I read, I think, a couple of her books, including Ingo, the one with the mermaids.
okay.
Yeah. So it's too long ago for me to remember details, but I do remember when I was reading that in the acknowledgments, like, oh, Helen Dunmore. That was his mother. It just
Yeah,
kind of struck me. I was
she
surprised.
was. I remember when she passed away about 8 or 9 years ago, and the British booktubers were all quite upset, and that was really, I'd never heard of her before, but she's very, I think, prolific novelist for adults and children, and a poet. Yeah.
Hmm.
And won lots of awards. So, are you going to go? Are you going to reread Ingo?
Oh, probably not, but only because I have so many other books to get to.
Really? I cannot
Yeah.
believe that. It is intriguing that I don't know if I've ever heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of people, some if a writer dies and they have an unfinished work that their son or daughter or anybody else, somebody else might finish it. But I've never heard of somebody taking a character from their mother or father's work and putting that character into their own work of fiction. That's really fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I think it has happened. I just can't
I'm
think of
sure it
any
has.
examples. So, you know, maybe somebody who's watching this
Uh,
conversation can contribute.
or you will at 3 o'clock
Or
this
no,
morning wake up and remember an example and we'll put it
right.
supplement.
Yeah. There was a word, a Cornish word that struck me, emmet,
Yeah, Emmett
calling
was
the calling visitors emmets, which is like
that's right.
ants. Yeah. Yeah.
Ants. The tourists are ants, kind of. They're everywhere in tourist season. Yeah, there was wonderful language, Cornish kind of words and expressions. The one that I noticed, and I don't know, it was because it didn't have a question mark at the end that I was confused by it for a while. And all right as a greeting. And what it
Mm.
means is, are you all right? And that's instead of hi, how are you? It's all right. but there was no question marks. And all right, sounds like I agree or that's okay. And people were greeting each other that way, so I had to look that up, but I got myself straightened around. But I enjoyed all the flavor of Cornwall, the geography and the some great expressions and yeah. Do you have a favorite another passage you'd like to read?
There's another section that really struck me. So when he explains to the reader, Jago is explaining who Granny Carn is.
I
Uh,
wanted to go back and refresh my memory on that because so I'm glad that you're bringing it.
yeah, says Granny Carn's not actually my granny.
Yeah,
She's not even Jacob's granny, which would make her my great granny if she was, but that's what we call her. And she lives up the hill. So after Jago has his injury, the first time that he goes to see her, she said, "What's happened to you has changed you. You'll be glad of it in time."
that's right.
And that I thought was striking.
Very striking. And I can
Yeah.
imagine it would strike you even more powerfully than it did me.
Um, yes, that there's a way of looking at things that change us, including injury, and how they can be a gift. And in time, we can be glad of it. The very first time that I had a concussion, uh, one of the things that kept happening to me was that my brain would just shut off entirely. So I'd be talking to somebody, and then suddenly it would be like, and then I would come back. My brain would be back online again, and I could talk some more. But that enabled me to figure out how to meditate because prior to that, I couldn't shut off
Mhm.
my brain. I was always thinking, thinking, thinking nonstop. And after that injury, I was able to stop the thinking, which I never could do before. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, that I think is again, if there's more to say, we'll say it. But that quote, that really is a good place to stop because that's the heart of the novel. What Granny Carn says
Yeah,
to him. That's the novel in a nutshell.
it is. It is. And um, like this was, yeah, 5 star for me too. It really
Yeah,
got me.
I
Really
think
got me.
more now that we've had this conversation. I mean, I just think it was a beautiful book and an important book. Yeah, I really recommend it very highly. It's not available in North America. You have to order it from the UK. I hope that changes,
Oh,
but you
oh,
can.
I hope it changes too because I can think of so many people I want to read this book.
I
Yeah.
I I
Yeah.
I didn't check. That situation may have changed. And it's apparently the audio is really good, read by an audio narrator with a thick Cornish accent, but it's not available in Canada at least.
Yeah, audio can make such a difference. I'm currently listening to John of John, Douglas Stewart's new book,
Oh, yes, I haven't gotten to it yet, but
and
have done all of his
there's
books on audio, yes.
Scott Scalick in it, and yeah, I love hearing it.
So you can buy it on the website that I sometimes avoid mentioning explicitly, Amazon, and it comes from the UK. So you pay a $4 Canadian shipping fee, but no, it's not otherwise available in North America. I buy books that are UK published books from Blackwell's because they have free shipping.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, this was a delightful chat, and can I pre-book you for a buddy read of anything that he writes in the future?
absolutely.
Would be great.
Yes, thank you, Sean. This is great. And thank
I
you for giving me a copy of this book too.
absolutely it worked like a charm. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Lindy.
My pleasure.
All right.